Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen,
I would like to welcome everybody to this auspicious event of the international launch of the
2022 Islamic Well-Being Index for Muslim countries, Republic of Maldives as leader and approach taken. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time to be with us today. Maybe some introduction. I think the index is the current assessment of the well-being of Muslim countries that places Maldives as the first among the other 33 countries, with Malaysia and Indonesia equal second. These three are societies where women play large roles, contributing to societal well-being. The index follows the approach detailed in the author's 2021 article, an Enhanced Islamic Well-Being Index for Muslim countries. The index, I would like to argue that there are basically two benefits that we could, acquire from the index, which are the index has the potential to guide decision makers and policy makers to identify strengths and weaknesses in a country's well-being and to rectify these weaknesses. And number two, it also informs where Islamic form of foreign aid may potentially provide the most benefit. So before we begin, before I give the mic to Professor Muhammad Hashim Kamali for opening remarks, we will be listening to a Quranic recitation in a video. So over to our technical team to display the video, inshallah.
Thank you, Brother Chairman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. For IIS, for me personally, it is a moment of celebration to start and to launch the significant Islamic Well-Being Index. Islamic Well-Being Index is grounded in the Maqasid of Sharia. And it has taken some time for Dr. Dawood to develop it. An initial version of it was in fact published in an article in our journal, Volume 1, Number 2, 2013. So almost 10 years ago. And Islamic Well-Being Index may well be the first of its kind. And the fact that it is based on Islamic values gives it a distinctive feature and merits the kind of effort that has gone into it. And IIS Malaysia is very pleased to be the venue for its launching and its continued annual featuring that Dr. Dawood is planning to sustain in the future, inshallah. There are many benefits for this. One is, of course, a measurement of different countries on a certain number of criteria. How do they measure up in aspiring to the well-being, Islamic well-being of its citizens? This is indeed, welfare is an important purpose and maqsad of the state itself in Islam. And the state was in fact regarded as a welfare organization to administer and to regulate the affairs of zakat and sadaqat and reception and distribution of these in a timely manner, in early Islam, it was a main feature, one of the main preoccupations of the state. The state itself is a welfare organization in many ways. There is considerable emphasis in the Quran on assistance to the fuqara and the masakin and those who are under debt and those who are the Ahl al-Sabil, the travelers, and even those who need assistance to get married or to repay their debts. These were in fact featuring strongly. They have featured in the statements in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying that those who have left wealth behind belongs to their heirs, but those who have left it behind or liability, that is my commitment. You read this kind of, hadith, and the spirit of this kind of dedication to the service of the people, assistance to those in need. This is the kind of the very heart of Islam. There is considerable emphasis in the Quran on these. Charity used to be optional, but Islam raised it to obligatory charity, to zakat and to sadaqatul fitr and the other varieties of charities. And there is strong encouragement, an important kind of aspect of Islam, to give charity as much as one is capable of, not limited to zakat into the sadaqat al-fitr. Maybe in future, inshallah, when this develops, some communication to the kind of like this year, the Maldives can't stop. The Maldives might not know that we are here discussing. But there could be some way of, like I know some people, Professor Abdullah Saeed, he is from Maldives. Let them know that we have started this. And one or two others, the former Attorney General of Maldives, his brother, in fact, Hassan Saeed, we could tell them and see if there is a response to this kind of development from these countries. I'm not certain what kind of, there are some happiness index we have heard, or whether it has common features with happiness index. It would be interesting to know. I think that since it came, one of the countries, a Buddhist country started it, and considerable interest was shown. We hope that the Islamic Well-Being Index will be duly publicized, and in due course it will become an important feature. And we are here to annually update this, inshallah. Dr. Dawood has emphasized this. That successful continued featuring of Islamic Well-Being Index is an important aspect, inshallah, of our activity, and we together will be working on this. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Datuk Prof. Muhammad Hashim Kamali, for a great opening remarks. Before we go further, I would like to inform everybody that in today's event, we will be having a 35 to 40 minutes presentation by Dr. Dawood Bachelor. And then from 11 o'clock, we will continue with discussion and interactive session, where we will invite our discussants for today, 4 of them, to give comment and to present their opinions regarding this index. I hope for every discussion we allow for 15 to 20 minutes because we need to observe our time today. This is a Friday morning. So before I give the mic to Dr. Daud Bachelor, I would like to introduce him. Dr. Daud Bachelor is an Australian Muslim. He is currently our Young Fellow at the International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies, IAIS Malaysia. He got his PhD from University of Malaya, master degree from University of London, master in engineering science in environmental management from the Griffith University. He has a multidisciplinary industrial and academic background. And it is worth noting that his PhD from University of Malaya got a winning of its research award. And he is also the co-founder of the Islamic College of Brisbane. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Daud Bachelor to present his research finding, the 2022 Islamic Well-Being Index for Muslim countries. Over to you, Dr. Daud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As-salatu was-salam ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. Honored professors, Dato, as respected participants in Malaysia and other countries, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Al-Biruni is my favorite classical Muslim scientist because he used to like to quantify phenomena just like I do. Here today, I provide the 2022 updated index, which was originally published in 2013. I would like to acknowledge the sterling support of Professor Muhammad Hashim Kuali and IIS Malaysia in engaging with me on this index and promoting it widely. The 2013 article is available on also on ResearchGate, the academic website, where it has received over 12,700 reads, which is quite a strong following. Only after developing my index, I came to know that an Islamicity index had already been published in 2010 by Hossein and al-Shari, academics in the United States. But they rated non-Muslim countries along with Muslim countries altogether. And surprisingly, New Zealand came out on top as the most Islamic country. And Malaysia in 33rd place was the leading Muslim country at that time. My Islamic Well-Being Index has a different objective from theirs, but it's also interesting that my index published in 2013 also put Malaysia as #1 at that time. We're naturally concerned about the well-being of fellow Muslims, which is, the energizer for this project. And we call to mind the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the believers in their mutual kindness, compassion, and sympathy are just like one body. When one of the limbs suffers, the whole body responds to it with wakefulness and fever. So I plan to, talk about the Islamic well-being approach related to Maqasid al-Sharia, the higher objectives of Islamic law, talk about the 2013 index, followed by the senior scholars' deliberations for Sharia index were published in 2015. I'll look briefly at the methodology for the 2021 Islamic Well-Being Index, which was an updated methodology based on the 2015 scholars' deliberations, and then look at the 2022 country ranking results. So serving God is humanity's ultimate function, the fulfillment of which constitutes well-being. Belief and righteous acts lead to internal satisfaction, which is the state of Islamic well-being. And this verse that we heard before recited is very relevant, Surah Al-Rad. Without doubt, in the remembrance of Allah, do hearts find satisfaction. For those who believe and work righteousness is every blessedness. And note the word Tuba there, we'll come back to that. Every blessedness and a beautiful place of final return. And this is interpreted as Islamic well-being and the ultimate success, falah. The correct condition is where the soul submits to its Lord in the mutmainah state. In Surah Al-Fajr, Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ayyatuhan nafsu mutmainah, Ya O soul at rest, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyattam mardiya, return to your Lord, pleased with him and pleasing to him, to Allah. Fadkhuli fi ibadi, enter you amongst my righteous servants. Wadkhuli jannati, enter you my heaven. So this is the ultimate objective for us to achieve this success, inshallah. Imam Abu Hamid Ghazali wrote on the Maqasid al-Shari that it is to produce the well-being of all mankind, which lies in safeguarding their faith, iman, their self, nafs, their intellect, aql, their posterity, nasl, and wealth, mal. Whatever safeguards these five serves the public interest, the maslahah, and is desirable, and whatever hurts them is against the public interest. These five objectives I mentioned are considered to be the essentials for a good life. So in 2013, my index appeared in Islam and Civilizational Renewal as a new Islamic rating index of well-being for Muslim countries. Parameters were selected for two main fields at that time, acts of worship, ibadah, and muamala, social transactions, and given equal weight. For muamala, the parameters chosen were adult literacy, status of women, care of children, income equality, and corruption levels. And we had data for 27 Muslim-majority countries that could be evaluated for their Islamic well-being. And this was the outcome. Malaysia first, Indonesia second, and Senegal third. So to me, this was surprising. I didn't know much about Senegal, and this was a surprising finding. And so I proposed in my publication that Islamic-minded tourists might like to visit Senegal. And indeed, I visited my son in Morocco in 2017 and took my wife with me to Senegal to see Senegal for myself. And I was quite surprised to find that from the poor to the high to the rich, they're all showing exemplary level of taqwa. So I was given the name of a alim out in the Sahel. So we drove 2 hours, 2.5 hours east of Dhaka, the capital, into this very dry area on the southern margin of the Sahara Desert, where normally there's hardly any grass, and the goats have to even climb trees to get their fodder from the leaves. And we're traveling along on this flat plain, and then amazingly appearing almost out of nowhere was this majestic mosque complex, the Grand Mosque at Tuba. And notice the name Tuba, which appeared in the Surah Al-Rad, which was incorporated as displaying the essence of Islamic well-being. And here we are at Tuba. So we found that the inspiration for a lot of the revival in Senegal is due to the work of Sheikh Amadou Bamba, who passed away in 1927. He's the founder of the Mouridia Brotherhood. And 40% of Senegalese Muslims are followers of this brotherhood, and 60% of them are women. And Tuba City has become West Africa's #1 pilgrimage destination. So following publication of my article, we had a deliberation by leading Muslim scholars in the world, including Muhammad Hashim Kamali, Jasa Auda, Anis Baswiran, Muhammad Larajani, Recep Senturk, and quite a few others. And they deliberated on what were the essential criteria to reflect a high level of Sharia in governance in Muslim countries. And their findings were published by Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf in the book Defining, Measuring and Indexing Islamic Contemporary Statehood of Muslim States. Now, Abdul Rauf's methodology was developed more to evaluate Islamic governance, whereas in my index, we seek to measure the result, the outcome of good governance as reflected in the spiritual and mental states of a country's Muslims. So certainly these scholars contributed significantly to advancing the robustness of the current Islamic Well-Being Index approach, which reflects Maqasid al-Sharia. So I'll just go through the methodology. So the scholars' definition of the Sharia Maqasid were used to identify proxy component indicators. For example, for the Nafs Maqsad, we have 5 separate indicators chosen to provide a composite value. And I just point out that choosing indicators is based on a few considerations. The leading ones are that we need to identify dense criteria that affect the individual's spiritual state. For instance, the percent of Muslims attending mosque weekly is a better indicator than measuring the number of mosques per 10,000 population, because the first is actually more reflecting the state of belief and practice. And secondly, we choose indicators that are easily obtained and reliable, such as from the World Bank and the United Nations. And indicators must be relevant and representative of the Maqsad. So the step 2 is data collection on the component indicators. And thirdly, we do conduct a statistical analysis of the component scores, which is conducted in a manner which is similar to the United Nations Human Development Index approach. For this last 2 years, the Deen Maqsad has been given twice the weighting of each of the other 4 Maqasid values. And in the end, we compute the final index scores and get the result. So I'm just going to go through the underpinning for our approach to measuring these different Maqasid. And so for protecting Deen or religion, this is the preservation and development of faith through spiritual enrichment in the divine law, embracing good moral standards and performing religious practices. Now, for the latest index, we have country data available only for 33 of the 50 Muslim majority countries. So data is unavailable for oil sheikdoms, Brunei and so forth, and certain African countries. And most of the source of the data for the measuring Deen is mainly from the 2012 Pew Center report on world Muslims, but also depending on world value surveys. And we're restricted to the available criteria, so we selected weekly congregational attendance, praying daily, and those who find religion to be very important, which is these 3 are reported on most of these surveys that we have used. Protecting nafs or life is protecting the existence, sustenance, and development of human life, satisfying basic physical and social needs and protection from harms. Muhammad Asad, in an insightful statement, said that an Islamic state must arrange the affairs of the community in such a way that every individual man and woman shall enjoy that minimum of material well-being without which there can be no human dignity, no real freedom, and no spiritual progress. And the responsibilities of the Islamic government, according to Abdul Rauf and his fellow scholars, is right to life and personal liberty, national security, provision of food, shelter, and clothing to those who can't afford them, healthcare, and environmental protection. Now we come to protecting aql, or intellect. This is utilizing and developing the intellect and safeguarding the mind from negative influences such as drugs and superstitions. Abdul Rauf mentioned that an Islamic state should promote equal access to quality education for all men, women, and children, and we hope the Taliban take note of that. Professor Kamali said the requirement applies to both spiritual and secular education. And the indicators used are adult literacy rate, human capital index, the female proportion in secondary education, and the press freedom index. Literacy rate is important as it reflects the ability to read the Quran and know the essentials for good parenting and gainful employment. So the next Maqasid is protecting nasab, lineage, and we sort of incorporate that within protecting the family. And this is protecting and promoting marriage and well-being of the family, which in Islam is considered to be the basic unit of society. The primary goals here are procreation and safeguarding morality. The indicators applied are maternal mortality rate, the infant mortality rate, crude marriage rate, crude divorce rate over the crude marriage rate, and the total fertility rate, which we believe should be greater than 2.1 children per woman as a replacement level for the population. And we're mindful of Allah Ta'ala's statement in Surah An-Nisa, let those guardians have the same fear as if they had left weak offspring behind. So in order to leave strong offspring, we need to inculcate good religious upbringing, good health and education, and nurturing family relationships. The protection of ownership and property, protection of mal, involves protection from damage, harm, or injustice. It's also developing wealth, making it available through circulation and an equitable distribution. Omar Chapra has written extensively on the topic, says that wealth is a trust from God and needs to be developed and used honestly for removing poverty, fulfilling the needs of all, making life as comfortable as possible for everyone, and promoting the equitable distribution of income and wealth. So the indicators selected to reflect these are the Gini coefficient of income equality, unemployment rate, corruption perception index, ecological footprint, and the Islamic Finance Development Index. In terms of the ecological footprint, I would point out that humanity is currently consuming twice the rate of resources from the world, twice faster than what the world can renew those resources. So obviously we give a greater positive rating to those countries with a lower ecological footprint. Here I just display the 2021, last year's rankings of the composite for the 4 non-religion Maqasid. We find that Tunisia, UAE, and Kyrgyzstan achieved the best result. War-torn countries and African countries were worst, and Nigeria was last in West Africa. So this brings to mind an intriguing finding that comes out of this whole Islamic Well-Being Index study. In 2013, we already found that West African countries that are at the highest level of personal religiosity, ibadah, were at the same time demonstrating the lowest levels of social interactions, muamala, right at the bottom on the muamala list, Nigeria, Chad, and Niger. So this pattern was confirmed in 2021. And as I said, Nigeria is last in the non-Deen Maqasid, but these West African countries on the Deen Maqsad are at the top. So this imbalance led to this hypothesis that many Muslim leaders in these West African countries may have an incorrect view that Islam comprises only individual ritual worship, rather than that worship is comprehensive, covering everything a person says, does, seeking Allah's pleasure. Islam includes a person's relationship with their spouse, children, relatives, and business relations, even birds and animals. And I believe that Islam's role in West Africa narrowed to core practices of ibadah as a survival response to severe depredations from colonialism and the European slave trade. So this was the overall 2021 results, which placed Indonesia first, Tunisia second, and Malaysia third. So this is for 31 countries. So Indonesia, the world's largest, this is for last year's result. Indonesia came first, the world's largest Muslim country, performed best. And I noticed since the 2004 tsunami that Indonesia has exhibited growing moderate Islamic resurgence, reflected in greater Muslim political participation and the dissemination and practice of Islamic teachings. The improvement shown for Tunisia, Jordan, and Morocco reflected a trend for Middle Eastern Muslims away from secular Arab nationalism, in my view. Malaysia lost its 2013 lead, probably reflecting the consequences of high-level corruption. But the country whose Islamic Well-Being Index fell the most since 2013 was Afghanistan, falling 19 places. And so this is the greatest decline over the 8-year period from 2013. And it's a validation, I believe, of my index that Gallup poll in 2018 confirmed that Afghans' ratings of their lives fell below record low levels ever recorded by any country ever that Gallup poll has surveyed. And this relates, no doubt, to the climate of fear from 40 years of continuous conflict. And also hidden was the Western alliance withdrawing aid and support from Afghanistan up until the time of the Taliban takeover. I believe my index also has some indirect validation from the statements of Shadi Hamid from the US Brookings Institution in his 2016 book called Islamic Exceptionalism. Because, Malaysia and Indonesia are in first, second, or third places, in all the three indices. So is my index wrong or something? Like in Indonesia and Malaysia at the periphery of the Muslim world. It's not like the Arab countries that are leading. But alhamdulillah, Shadi indirectly validated my findings in that he wrote that Indonesia and Malaysia feature significantly more Sharia ordinances than Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, or Lebanon. He says while Indonesia and Malaysia are led by secular-based parties, these parties had to enact Sharia legislation to satisfy popular demands of citizens for Islam to play a central role in law and governance. So this may not necessarily just be at federal level, but also state and provincial levels. So now I'm starting on providing the results for this year, Maqsad by Maqsad, objective by objective. And this is for the Deen objective. And as we see, I won't show the full list because that involves 50 countries. I'm just showing the leaders. So for Deen, out of 33 countries, the strongest are Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso, and Nigeria. And those that are lowest in the Deen objective are the former communist countries. Notice that these are all African countries Indonesia is the first non-African country to rate in this gene Maqasid. Then we go to life objective, and for life, note the 5 parameters I've chosen here, just as example: peace index, poverty index, national homicides, life expectancy, and environmental protection index. And out of 50 countries, the best are in the Middle East and Europe, with UAE, Albania, Jordan, and Kuwait leading. The most improved countries are Kosovo and Maldives. We go on to intellect, and the best are former communist countries, Maldives and Gulf Arab countries, who emphasize education in this field. Those that do worst are African and war-torn countries. For female participation in secondary school, the Gulf Arab countries and former communist countries do best. For the family objective, the countries that score well are Arab countries, Iran and Senegal, who have best probably inculcated the teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these are often countries that are under some strain, like Iran, Syria. So and often they are also Maliki Madhab countries, but I won't go into details on that. Former communist countries, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Uzbekistan are improving strongly. So this is reflecting some change in these former communist countries towards a more Islamic identity. Then we come to the male objective, and I point out from the start that you can see that I have very little data for Palestine. So the result for Palestine is not really significant. The leaders are Burkina Faso, Malaysia, and UAE. Income equality is best in former communist countries and Algeria in the Gini index. And countries that do worst in Mal are war-torn countries and those recently in conflict. So when I obtained the composite of all those of the 4 non-Dean objectives, we have this result. So this is the result for all 50 countries, and it's the only sort of rankings that we have, which include the Gulf Arab countries. We don't have Islamicity or data for them on the strength of their beliefs. So former communist countries and Tunisia did the best, and the most improved countries are like Kosovo and Maldives, and Kosovo has jumped up 27 places. Amazing in 1 year. Okay, here is the overall result, the country rankings for 2022 for the Islamic Well-Being Index for 33 countries, for which we have full data for all of the Maqasid. And so Maldives is followed very closely with Indonesia and Malaysia. Now, just look at the score. Like Maldives is 1 point out of 700 ahead of Indonesia and Malaysia. So I would say that this is actually not statistically significant, that there's one group up there altogether showing exceptional resilience during the pandemic time. And this is an aspect of the Islamic Well-Being Index, that it also measures resilience in the face of hardships. So we're seeing this with this result. So we have these 3 leading countries are countries where women play large roles contributing to societal well-being. And I understand even the name of Maldives, it means islands of women. Maldives appeared for the first time since religious data is available from World Value Surveys. It's facing an existential threat in that because of global warming, sea level rise, it could be swamped in 60 years' time. So the question arises, are Maldivians coming closer to Allah because of, their circumstance and the concern for the future? Turkey, Pakistan, and Morocco were the countries that dropped the most in rankings in 1 year, facing political, economic problems exacerbated by the pandemic. And we note that in Pakistan and Morocco, Islamic-based parties have just lost governance. The star country is Kosovo, and it's particularly of interest that it's in Europe, and it's dramatically risen 18 places from the last spot in last year's index, and also 2013. So something dramatic is happening in Kosovo right now. So just also, like, I was just looking at the index and looking at Kyrgyzstan, just showing a jump in 1 year. So what's going on in Kyrgyzstan? So I Googled and found that this political party has become very active, the NOR party, and it's been promoting religious values. So this is one of the reasons for the rise of Kyrgyzstan. And if I'm not mistaken, the leader of Kyrgyzstan visited Malaysia in around 2011, seeking advice on how to make his country a better Muslim country. So just continuing on the next rankings, 12 to 22, and we see Kosovo there has risen 18 places. And then we come to the countries that are at the ranking at the bottom of the 33 countries. We notice that Pakistan is ranked below Afghanistan, and Turkey is ranked below Nigeria. So although, Allahu Alam, this could be some indication of reality, but it also makes us suggest to look at the weightings of our indexes of the different Maqasid, whether we need to have a real look at them to adjust them, perhaps. So we'll be taking that into account. So, the results of the Islamic Well-Being Index over the 3 years it's been conducted, we see a breakup into regional groups. Best to worst, Southeast Asian countries and Maldives are first, followed by non-Gulf Arab countries, then by Senegal, Burkina Faso, and Djibouti, then by higher performing former Soviet bloc countries, then Bangladesh, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Turkey, with at the bottom former communist bloc, other African and war-torn countries last. What I have here is I'm wanting to compare the averages for each indicator used, the averages that we get for the Muslim majority countries compared against world averages, like how are Muslim countries faring compared to world averages. So we find that for religiosity, for homicide rates, Gini coefficient, fertility rates, that Muslim countries are doing better. But for the majority of the indicators that we've chosen, Muslim countries are doing worse than the world average. Like the female participation, Muslim countries 70%, and the world average 76%. So this result challenges Muslim majority countries that their governments and citizens should aspire strongly to improve in these fields, which are essential for Islamic well-being. Just looking at the benefits of the Islamic Well-Being Index, it provides practical insights for countries that aspire to move to a higher state. The leading countries in the separate Maqasid fields could represent role models for the lagging countries. And thirdly, the Islamic Well-Being Index indicators provide a way to spot problems, set targets, track trends, and identify best practice policies. This is basically showing, a table shows the deaths per 100,000 of population from COVID-19 in the Muslim majority countries. And I just point out that some of the countries that dropped the most, such as Turkey, Jordan, Morocco, are high on this list of fatalities from COVID. Indonesia, Maldives, and Malaysia have lower rates, and this is also due to their social cohesion, no doubt. But they couldn't do better than Turkmenistan, which has 0 cases, 0 deaths. And this is because Turkmenistan is an autocratic country, and the leader just decreed that pandemic didn't exist. It was nonsense. So there were no deaths from the pandemic in Turkmenistan. So in conclusion, we can say that the 2022 index has identified leading countries showing resilience facing the pandemic, but also those most impacted. And this is seen particularly in the family Maqasid results, where divorce rates throughout the world were exacerbated greatly because of lockdowns. But the impact was especially seen in Morocco, which was also facilitated by the Mudawana Code, which was promulgated, I think, about 2004, which allowed women also to ask for the dissolution of their marriage. And we note that in Oman, divorce rates doubled. Tunisia has dropped to 2nd place, coinciding with authoritarian rule, as the president suspended parliament to rule by decree last year. And Gulf countries, UAE, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, declined in the composite non-Deen Maqasid fields, suggesting less resilience to the pandemic, but also probably a reduction in Islamicity. And we see in UAE anti-Sharia legislation appearing in the last few years. Just to look at Malaysia's position, seeing we're in Malaysia, I just point out that it shows weakness in wealth, in income equality from the Gini coefficient. Corruption perception index is rather elevated. But we see, particularly in the family Maqasid, low marriage rate, almost in the lowest quartile, and a high divorce rate. So that is something worth looking at in Malaysia to try to boost Islamic well-being. And I have my recommendations are that a dedicated organization needs to be established and funded to manage and development and the application of the index, including conducting periodic surveys of all 50 Muslim majority countries to fill data gaps and improve survey focus and accuracy. And respected Muslim professionals will be needed who can promote and advise on Islamic values in the important Maqasid fields, as seen in the leading countries, to help uplift the state of citizens in laggard countries. And special attention is warranted to identify the best approach towards helping in enhancing Islamicity in the former communist bloc countries, and secondly, for helping African countries that lag in the non-Deen Maqasid fields. For 2023, we plan to increase the nafs, weighting of the nafs objective result, and also to add research and development in the intellect field. And I would also point out that I note some potential political bias on some of the indicators which need consideration. For instance, the Global Peace Index has Afghanistan last, and this index just came out last month, I believe, the new index, Australian-based, which is nonsense, because I have first-hand information that Afghanistan is now quite a very peaceful place, and it should have risen in that Global Peace Index, but it hasn't. So we're just coming to the end of my talk. I'd just like to indicate that thanks to staff in IS here, alhamdulillah, that we have our website up and running. You can access it on islamicwellbeing.com. So here we are, and you can, for instance, open it up and find that Professor Kamali is chair of the advisory board, and Professor Abdul Aziz Bugaut has kindly accepted to be on the board of advisors for the index. We have all the indexes there listed. You can access them, and also you can provide feedback on the contact us facility there on the website. So alhamdulillah, that brings us to the end of my talk. Thanks for your patience. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dr. Daud Bachelor, I think thank you very much for a very fascinating presentation on the index. I think it is very holistic in terms of it covers not only economic indicators but also political, societal, and also religiosity indicators as well. So we are moving to our next session, which is the discussion and interactive session. That we will have 4 discussions for today. The first one will be Prof. Abdul Aziz Barghouth, and then we'll be followed by Mr. Azizi Cik Seman, and then Dr. Alwani Ghazali, and last but not least, Dr. Ghazali Yusof. Before I give the mic to our first discussants, I would like to introduce Professor Abdul Aziz Barghouth. He is currently the Dean of International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTEC, IIUM. He also served as a full professor of Islamic Studies and Civilization, Kuliah of Islamic Rival Knowledge and Human Science, IIUM. He has a wide areas of expertise, including Islamic theory of civilization, Islamic worldview, culture and education, Islamic economic theory, and so on and so forth. He has produced more than 50 articles and involved in many administrative positions in IIUM. And he has received several awards in his long career, like the Best Lecturer Award, Best Research Award, and so on and so forth. And his biography was included in Marcus Who's Who in the World, 2000 Outstanding Intellectuals of the 21st Century. Without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Abdul Aziz Barghouth. Over to you, Prof.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, let me congratulate the Institute and Prof. Kamali for this very wonderful developments and very wonderful project that the Institute is, as Prof. Kamali mentioned, supporting and trying to advance. And also I would like to thank Dr. Dawood for all these great efforts in the last few years, and you come a long way from 2013 and today we are 2022. I really wanted to commend and support this effort of coming up with Islamic Well-Being Index, which is really needed for the development of the Islamic Ummah and Islamic societies and countries. And I see that it will gain momentum in the future, inshallah. And I think all of us as scholars or institutions need to support such effort and try to enhance it so that we improve it all the times until we reach a level where we have a really well structured, scientific, objective, and a kind of an index that can be used with all the requirement of reliability, accuracy of the data, coverage, weightage of the indicators, and all other things, because the effort you are doing is not really that easy. And talking about an ummah or the Islamic world with at least the 57 OIC Islamic countries, they constitute a very big or large population of the world today. So I really commend and thank all the parties or institutions involved in developing this well-being index, and especially Dr. Dawood for this important effort and project. Now, as I haven't I was just invited recently to this, and I didn't find much time to look at the whole system and how it works, and all these indicators, and how the Maqasid, the Sharia, the 5 values are articulated as a framework to help you come up with this well-being index. And also, I didn't see the data, how the data is collected, and how it is used, and how it is analyzed, and the other things of the technical part, which is important in such kind of indices. Now, this is why I'm just going to give some general comments for maybe the improvement of the tool in the future, inshallah, and also to enhance and support some of the things which are here. Now, I saw you have sent the summary which you read partly. I saw in this summary that the index, alhamdulillah, I think the way how you put the Maqasid al-Sharia and try to articulate them in this index looks good, and we'll need, inshallah, in the future more or further focus, so that we understand and identify operationally the indicators related to Deen and the other 4 values, and also what are the measures, the proper measures, the right measures to measure these things. As you said rightly, that you are looking at the well-being, and you try to define well-being related to the ibadah side, the Deen, and also the muamalat. But I think we can also enhance this when we talk about the well-being from an Islamic perspective. I believe the concept of the human, the concept khalifa, the concept of hayatun tayyibah, desirable life based on the values and teachings of Islam, need to be somehow articulated. Therefore, well-being, as you mentioned, will need to have these aspects of physical, material, spiritual, moral, ethical, social, cultural, physical, emotional, psychological, and mental, and also environmental, and our relation with people and also with the environment. In other words, the indicators should not only be of material nature, like index of happiness, of index of corruption, index. All these are indicators which are materialistic or more measurable based. But there are indicators which are intangible, but they are very powerful in understanding the meaning of the well-being of a Muslim in this world and in the hereafter. So this is the first comment that I wanted just to mention here, so that later on maybe we can go more to develop a more deeper understanding of the well-being in this context of Maqasid al-Sharia. Number 2, I would like also to, I saw here, I hope that this index is more an academic exercise that will help the policymakers and the countries to improve in certain areas which the indicator or the index is trying to look at. This is why I think it will be very good if we try to avoid in our presentation of the index anything that can create kind of sensitivities or some kind of political perspective of the thing. For example, you mention here in one of the comments here, say 2 leading countries, Turkey and Pakistan, displayed the greatest one-year fall of ranking due to economic and political problems. So I think we don't know. There are many factors which lead to what's happening in a country. That's why I think we just try to look at the things from more objective, more social, more culture, more objective, more methodological and academic kind of interpretation. Like for example, Tunisia dropped from 2nd place last year, dying with the appearance of authoritarian rule, for example. So I think, I hope the index goes along with the this kind of very objective and very academic, scientific kind of an approach. Now, I wanted also, this one is a question which I want Dr. Dawood later maybe to comment on, because you are bringing a new narrative, which is human Islamic well-being index based on Maqasid al-Sharia. And this is really great and really good. But when I come to the measures which you use here to measure the indicators, to measure, for example, you are using the Global Peace Index, you are using the Corruption Index, you are using the Press Freedom Index. And as you know, these indices are also having their own narrative and their own purpose and their own objective and their own way of articulating the data and analysis, like the ranking of universities, like each one has is. That's why I think, inshallah, in the future, we move forward in developing our own measures, which are along or in accordance with our own narrative of the Maqasidi-oriented model of measuring the well-being for the Muslim countries, where we take into account the socio-cultural, the economic, and the other dynamic factors in the Muslim countries. I'm not saying you don't use this data for certain purpose, but we need to be aware how we articulate it, because it might be seen like we have a ruh, which is the Maqasidi, which is this Islamic, and then you have the tools and the measures which are more maybe of different nature. The other indices like the mortality or the human capital index or the employability, these things are okay. But when it comes to the corruption index or peace index, or there are certain measures there which in fact sometimes they go against the spirit of the Maqasid itself. So we, inshallah, in the other versions to come, we can work along this, inshallah. So the number 4, the other comments that I just wanted to make, Dr. Dawood and the team, for indices like this to really move forward and make impact, we need to have a plan for it. We need to have a strategy for it, because now it started with individual effort or some institutions, but our aims should be like how to make it more institutionalized, more to become in the policy recommendations or in the policies of countries or bodies or institutions, Because if it will just remain as an exercise like ours today, it's good, it's great, but I think in the future we need to see representatives of countries or bodies or influential stakeholders in Muslim countries are attending and looking at it and seeing at it and commenting on it and saying that, oh, this is not right, this is right, this is, so that we create the synergy for the sustainability and continuity of the index. Now, this is why awareness and promotion of this index at the academic level, the industrial level, the government level, I think will be something very important. And of course, along with this promotion, we need really to enhance it and move forward with it. Now, number 5, I just wanted to ask you also another question where I need your comment later, because this is important in the future, the weightage. When you say, for example, in the first one in 2013, it was 50-50, deen and muamalat. And later on, because of the comment of some of our scholars, you changed to 70-30. And now you mentioned that in the future, you will be, inshallah, looking at the weightage also of certain aspects of the muamalat. How do we do this? Based on what criteria? Is it based on the survey and of the stakeholders and the views of the stakeholders who are the target, or based on the views of the scholars and ulama who got their views, and each one has his own perspective and view, and they might differ, or we are looking at both indicators. Now, based on all these comments, the other number 6 that I wanted to ask you, Dr. Dawood, also for the improvement of this, you mentioned the definition of Imam al-Ghazali about the Maqasid al-Sharia, and you mentioned that he spoke about well-being of all mankind. Now, in the future, is this index going to be articulated to be for Muslim well-being or for humanity, well-being of humans in the world? So when it comes to the results and the things that you brought, and some countries goes up and those comes a little bit down, and I think all this need to have the rationale and the justification for it. And I really thank you and thank the Institute and Prof. Kamali in particular, and those who are supporting this effort once again. And I see that it can become a great tool for the Islamic countries, inshallah, to do their efforts on this. I stop at this point, and maybe later on if there are any questions or I can comment. May God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Abdul Aziz, thank you very much for very interesting, very valuable comments and suggestions that you have made. I think now maybe Dr. Daud will comment or respond to your question and statement at the end of this session. So then we will move to our next discussion, which is Mr. Azizi Cik Seman. He is actually a senior lecturer at the Department of Sharia and Economics, Academy of Islamic Studies, University of Malaya. He is actually my ustaz. I think I took the subject with him, Muamalah Maliyah al-Muasirah, last time, I think 10 years ago. So his area of expertise are Islamic transaction, Islamic economics, Islamic banking, comparative microeconomic, and Islamic capital market. He is a committee member of Sharia Advisors in Islamic Finance, Asas Examination Board from 2020. He is also a member of Sharia Advisory Board of Bank Muamalat Malaysia from 2005 to currently. He was the member of the panel of evaluation of National Accreditation Board of Malaysia Qualification Agency, MEQA, from 2011 to 2014. He was also the chairman of Sharia Advisory Committee of the Association of Islamic Banking Institutions Malaysia, IBIM, from 2012 to 2020. He is also the recipient of several excellent service awards from Muslim Malaysia. So without further ado, over to you, Mr. Azizi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa bihi nasta'in wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Bishrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir bi atmil khair. Again, thank you again, Dr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to congratulate Prof. Hashim Kamali and IIS, and thank you for involving me in this very wonderful session. My congratulations to Dr. Daud for coming with this very good index as indicator of well-being level and can be used to assist countries to improve their well-being level based on the Maqasid approach. My comments, I think, will be very brief since some of the points that I want to mention have been touched by Prof. Aziz. One or two questions here. Number one, I'm not sure because again, taking cue from what you mentioned before, the detailed components of and the data for the index. I do not have any access to those data, but I believe from what I read, for example, in the first Maqsad, Hifzuddin, it is from the table. I conclude there are only 3 items involved in measuring that construct, which if I may suggest, it may or it can be expanded to include more items. For example, I in 2007, 2008, I and a number of my colleagues developed an index of religiosity. We came with an idea to measure or to look at the relationship between religiosity level and the selection of banking system, whether it is conventional or Islamic. And during that time, when we browsed through the literature, what we have found was that there were many approaches that can be used to measure religiosity, at least the deen components in this index, and ranging from a very simplistic approach, 10, 12 items, to very complicated, maybe 20, more than 40 items. But the idea at that time was, when our brainstorming went on, we conclude that why not we look at the spirit of Hadith Jibril, Islam, Iman, and Ihsan, just to measure the religiosity level of the respondents or whoever you want to take the data from. So for the Islam or Sharia part, for example, we took, yes, there are many items that should be included, and it is up to the researcher to select which is the most important, so that we balance between the number of items and the appropriateness of those items to be included. So we mix between the obligatory, for example, those 5 times prayer, the zakat, the hajj, and so on and so forth, and the non-obligatory, al-nawafil, al-mandubat, and so on and so forth. So that the Sharia aspect. The other one is the iman or the aqidah part. So there are a set of questions or items just to measure that. And the last part is the akhlaq or tasawwuf. So combining those, I think instead of putting or just relying on a very few items to conclude the level of deen or religiosity, if we may use that term, I think it is more appropriate if we can expand that construct to have more items. And as I'm not sure, but as I understand it, the first item or the deen factor or the deen maqsad is very important. Maybe we can you put twice or twice the weight there. I think that will commensurate with the numbers of items that we include to build that construct or to build that that maqsad. Okay, so I think for that one specifically on the first maqsad of deen, the general comment is I'm not sure whether it is appropriate or not is to include the governance in order to promote those 5 maqasid, the governance aspects. I do not know whether it is appropriate or not to include that as a additional item. Maybe it will be given a very little weightage, or just an additional item to be put as note, or like in Malaysia we have index Maqasid Sharia. Because the all those or the 5 maqasid will not be there unless the governance aspect is well taken care of. Okay? You can have yes, you can have the community or the individuals being Islamic and so on and so forth, but it will be I think in my humble opinion, it will be more proper if a set of governance is there and we have some measure to gauge that aspect in this case. I think that's all from me. As I've said, it's very brief. Again, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Mr. Azizi. Thank you very much for your valuable comments and suggestion. We now move to our next discussion, Dr. Alwani Binti Ghazali. She is a senior lecturer at the Department of Aqidah and Islamic Thought, Academy of Islamic Studies, Muslim Malaya, IPUM. Before he joined UM, he served International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, for more than 10 years. And then he worked at University Islam Malaysia, and she has a specializing in Usuluddin and cooperative religion. Her PhD is at the Melbourne University, and she earned a PhD from University of Melbourne, where she won 2 competitive awards: Melbourne International Research Scholarship and Melbourne International Fee Remission Scholarship. So between 2020 to 2022, she was the Deputy Director of UM Center for Civilizational Dialogue. So without further ado, over to you, Dr. Alwani.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to congratulate Dr. Daud Bachelor for this very huge effort. I'm very humbled indeed to have been gathered here today with you and the huge contribution that you have made. I think that's an eye-opening data. All right, thanks. Okay, I would like to congratulate Dr. Dawood for this very huge effort that he made with the team. I congratulate as well the team, IAIS, and the whole team. For me, it's a very eye-opening data. I think that the impact of the work is very huge. Not only does it provide the fundamental need for Muslim researchers, it's also an access for the Muslim scientific research, which is, I assume, has been Islamized in that way. I'm interested in few aspects of the index, which has to do with the governance as well, just like Mr. Azizi mentioned just now. Whether it is considered as something outstanding and important to be included in the index, which I think it is, and in fact it is a crucial aspect, considering that governance is one of the dilemmas of Islamic countries at the moment. From there on, I would like to ask you several questions. According to Abdullah Ahmadi Naim, he prefers the term secular state as compared to Islamic state, fearing that if the latter is used, Islamic state, that religion might be devised by certain parties for their own agenda. Like your comment on that. And I also would like to also refer the term by the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, secular state with Islamic reference. Is that relevant to you? What is the concept which you have taken into consideration in building up this index when you discuss it? Right, and that's one. And the other point that I would like to ask you is whether the dynamic of the societal members in each country has been taken into consideration when you describe the muamalat aspect. The dynamic which I meant is dynamic between the societal members and the NGOs in facing plights like COVID-19, etc. How do we separate between the normal values of being a human being, and the one that you said you define as Islamic actions under muamalat? I think those are just two observations for me. The other thing is, the other aspect is about the continuity, just like Professor Abdul Aziz mentioned just now. I'm happy if this huge effort could be institutionalized and further synergized effort can be extended with other countries, other parties, and a more formal effort to be taken to present this idea forward. And I hope that it also left a legacy among your team members to become the next person in queue for the continuity of this big project, which have great impact to the Ummah. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Dr. Alwani, for your comments and your question. And Dr. Dawood will respond to you at the end of the session. Now we move to our last discussion. Datuk Dr. Ghazali bin Datuk Muhammad Yusof, He is a Malaysian intellectual and entrepreneur. He is currently the founder and president of the Malaysian Association of Minang Scholars. He was the general manager of Dunlop Malaysia Industry and also the group chief executive of Arab Malaysian Bank Group. He was awarded the honorary Doctor of Laws from University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, and Datuk Ghazali is also currently the vice chairman of Lembaga Peradaban Melayu Adab and chairman of Iran Asian Business Council. Without further ado, over to you, Datuk.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Syukur Alhamdulillah. I'm very grateful to the organizers, especially to Brother Hashim Kamali for this very rare honor for me to speak today and give my views on what I consider to be a very, very important and relevant topic. I'm not an expert in Islam, nor am I a member of the academia. I'm just a plain businessman who's enthusiastic within the corporate world to spread the teachings of Islam and to practice Islam as per the Quran within the corporate hemisphere. And so whatever I do is guided by the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and I pray for His guidance in everything that I do. The thing that caught me most about this thing, and I'm very grateful to Dr. Daud, is the word well-being. I'm a businessman. I like to add value to life as I add value to my company and also my balance sheet. But I look beyond the balance sheet. How do I make whatever rizki that I receive from Allah, and how do I spend it? And how do I share it with the others? Because that is the spirit of Islam. So a lot of the things that I'm going to say has got to do with these three principal things that I mentioned just now. Well-being, charity, and most important of all, to follow the teachings of the Quran and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To me, being a member of the business community, I've been involved in so many committees. I was on the main board of MIDA for nearly 30 years. I believe I'm the longest serving director on the Malaysian Investment Development Authority. I was a merchant banker. I was the general manager of a British multinational for many years. I've traveled a lot, 104 countries. I'm writing my memoirs now. And had so many experiences, exposure. And of course, I'm very active in the chambers of commerce of industry and trade, very active in the ASEAN chambers of commerce, and also a few of the bilateral associations, Malaysia, Canada, Iran, ASEAN, Malaysia, French, Malaysia, German, and ultimately, and up to now I treasure it, I was co-chairman of the ASEAN European Business Council. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I listened to the paper being presented and also the views of the discussants, I suddenly realized that it is very important that the most important section of our community today, the business section, especially the small and medium enterprises, must understand what we as a Muslim country and we as a Muslim want to achieve in this world, especially in the context of Malaysia, which is a very multi-religious, multiracial, multifaceted country, and we exist within a very multiracial region. So people must understand this. So what I would like to suggest is, instead of just doing what Dr. Daud is doing, which is very good, I congratulate him on his efforts, we must now function as insular. We must synergize everything that we do within the context of the international world. And I think this aspect has got to be clearly understood. Then, of course, one of the favorite subjects which I've always borne in mind is the promotion of good human values. Just to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very, very active in the interfaith organizations of work. I'm a founder, or rather a very active member of the Malaysian Christian Federation, advisor to the Malaysian Buddhist Federation, Zimfu Moon, and also with the Hindu group, Pure Life Society, where I was vice president and chairman of the management committee for nearly 20 years. And my late father also served for about 4 years. And of course, I'm very active with the Islamic associations up till now. So I view this, what we are trying to do now cannot be just narrow. It must expand itself so that they understand, that the others will understand what we're trying to do. And that's why I was mentioning on a few occasions, because of my involvement with universities on their boards and also on the board of advisors of a few institutions, that we must create a universality of ideas and religions, and maybe create in the process a university of universal human values. This is something which I believe Malaysia can take the lead, because we have a very strong history. And indeed, our evolution has always been multiracial in perspective. And Malaysia can be a very strong force in this. Indeed, it is this very factor that has made me, welcome me to a few universities, both in non-Muslim and Muslim countries, to be on their board of adjunct professors. And I teach entrepreneurship in the sense to the masters and the doctoral students, and encourage them to think in terms of a global input. Now, I find this survey, which Dr. Daud has done, very, very exciting. I think this is a very good start you've taken, and I must congratulate you, Dr. Daud, for this very noble effort. Of course, it's not perfect. Together, I think we can make this a very important document, not only for Muslim countries, I think for the world, because this is a document that can start us thinking in the right direction, especially in the context of Malaysia and in the context of ASEAN, where we are functioning. Now, my company, Nusantara Technologies, we are an engineering company. I've always functioned on the basis of human values, meaning fear of God, honesty, integrity, charity, and most importantly, whatever we do must be shared the benefits. And indeed, I'm quite active in the Waqaf tradition. I'm a founding member of the Al-Kaf Foundation of Malaysia, and my company actually is contributing quite a bit to this Waqaf objectives. Now, because this answers what Dr. Daud has been saying about the well-being index, and I agree with the first discussant, Dr. Rashid. This is a very good start, but it needs to be propagated, treated, and we must not function in silo. We must synthesize, and we must synergize with other religions, so that in this process, they will treat what we're trying to do not as a threat, but as a collaborative endeavor that is willing to give energy to the whole aspect of human civilization. So you can see here, I'm not an academic. I'm just a simple human being that wants to make life better for everybody. And I'm trying my very best to become a better Muslim in the process. So I'm all ears, Dr. Daud, and you can rely on my support in all the endeavors that you are trying to do. And whatever I've said just now, I've said it in all sincerity. And today is Friday, and I'm sure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is listening to what I said. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. These are my views.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, thank you very much, Dr. Ghazali. Maybe now I would like to open for Dr. Daud to respond to the question and proposals given by our discussants. And then maybe we have some general discussion among the participants here before some concluding remarks by Dr. Daud. So over to you, Dr. Daud.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I thank the discussants for their contributions and comments about the index and their questions. So first of all, responding to Professor Abdul Aziz Bagaut, so you were commenting first about the other aspects or considerations such as Hayat Taiba, needing to take account of ethical and cultural and environmental issues, as well as spirituality. I guess with those like Quranic verses and like the state of mutmainah that we are trying to achieve, it's a state of positive state existing in this world and preparing for the next world, and trying to achieve that state of mutmainah in the stages from amara to lawama to mutmainah that individual Muslims will aspire to, and this is a sort of gradation that I have in mind, I guess, in terms of the index to achieve. Some of the other aspects, less relevant to sort of being in tune with pleasing Allah and preparing for the next life. So these are the paramount objectives that we're trying to assess, human hearts in this respect. And the state of a human being is related to his family upbringing and also his societal, environment as well. So although we're trying to measure this state of the hearts of the individual, it's reflecting a state of a country at large. So these other aspects, are sort of related to, the focus that we're trying to achieve. Just have to recap on your question. Okay, so I think you were also commenting in your second point that we don't have to be too political in our comments. I guess I was trying to bring out the fact that what is happening in the index is related to events that can be identified happening in different countries in their social, economic, and political status, which are impacting on their citizens, or vice versa. And I was trying to show that the index can indicate that things are happening in these countries that are having an impact on individuals in a massive way. And we see these major changes in just 12 months, that they are related to things that we can observe with our eyes, It's not something which is, vague or hidden, which is impacting on the hearts of the citizens of those countries. But I would say that we have to be diplomatic in our approach, and because we hope to engage with all these countries in different ways, so we have to bring up these matters in a good manner, inshallah. You also, Professor Abdul Aziz, you're talking about the fact that, I'm relying on different data, which includes, for instance, corruption perception indices, global peace index, which are, you can say, in terms of a researcher, is secondary data. We're not necessarily always looking at surveys, direct surveys to population. I guess up until this stage, it's been the Islamic Well-Being Index has been a one-man band, and I guess I have to rely on whatever data is easily available that can reflect Islamic well-being. No doubt, if we have an institution which is developed to promote and enhance this index concept, that we can conduct surveys of our own and develop our own markers for corruption or peace index, but it's difficult for us to do everything, so we just have to focus on the priorities at the time, and we're still dependent on others. But I think we will try to look at those indices produced by other parties, whether they are relatively independent, unbiased, and how we might be able to remove bias and to enhance the outcome of usefulness to our index ourselves. Then you were talking about the platform and needing a grand strategy, institutions to make this index effective, and to basically to attain the ultimate benefit on the possibilities that arise from having such an index and its benefit to the Muslim world in general. So that is something that we are looking at. At the moment, we're sort of just finding our feet before we run. We're having baby steps, if you like. But we do hope to have an international conference in a year's time, and get further feedback, and look towards establishing an independent institution with a permanent office and staff, inshallah, going forward. In terms of the weighting of the different Maqasid, this is a subject of discussion amongst senior scholars who are focusing on Maqasid al-Sharia, and a lot has been said. I have referred to this book and what scholars said in terms of weighting of different indices. Yasser Auda suggested that the non-deen Maqasid could be weighted up to 70% or even more. So on that basis, I gave them a weighting of 2/3 and deen 1/3. But fortunately, we have as our chair of advisors, Professor Mohammed Hashim Kamali. I don't know, Prof, would you like to make a comment about weighting of Maqasid?
Yes, I think that there is a certain kind of an order of priority between these 5 maqasid as well. Like if you compare the maqsad of protection of life to that of the protection of property, for example, should there be a conflict between the two, the protection of life will take priority in should there be a need, for example, to sacrifice property in order to protect life. That will be also the normal thing to do. Protection of rationality through education, for example, the institutional aspect of education, literacy, beyond literacy, then nowadays paying attention to research and development and science, for example. These are the priorities of the time to be reflected, and what kind of it depends on the capabilities of countries. What resources can they allocate, for example, to each of the Maqasid? We ought to know, for example, a certain weightage, how we allocate the resources. Naturally, protection of life and religion, those are the priorities that come higher to protection of the family and property. And I think that the internal order of priority between the Maqasid has been discussed by the scholars of Maqasid. And there are certain, I think it was mentioned here that the protection of Maqasid requires, there are certain basic needs. For example, one was mentioned that got good governance, a government to take care of the management of the Maqasid. That is essential. And the other one might mention is that there is so much conflict in much of it among Muslim countries, that there is peace. Unless there is peace, a country can hardly allocate resources to these other priorities. Naturally, if it is establishing peace, if not mentioned in the Maqasid of medieval times, now it should be. It should be one of the priorities. And it is good that your well-being index has paid attention to inclusivity of women in particular. And it is not just inclusivity, but also the role that is given to women. The United Nations now mentioned 30%, for example, participation to women and the corporate sector, in government, and other important sectors. It is important that this inclusivity is taken seriously. Imagine in Afghanistan, the Taliban themselves, by appearance, you would think that they will be devoted to Islamic objectives. When you look at their performance, for example, they have downgraded education of women, of schooling, for example. Are these the kind of things you expect from the Islamic approach to values? They are working against what we believe is, the true Islamic values. Like good governance is not in their vocabulary even. This is the kind of thing, welfare objective in service to the country, to the citizens. Since they are in power, the economy has gone down. The marketplace has gone down. And there is kind of dissatisfaction with their performance. These are, by appearance, you come in the name of Islam with a big, noise, but your performance is just going and moving in the country. Poverty, for example, has increased. There is much more poverty in Afghanistan now than there was before. So I think that these are some of the related aspects we discussed the other day, and I guess if there are other participants in the discussion, we have brief time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for adding those points on the weighting of the different Maqasid, which is an important aspect of our index that we is something that we are looking into closely and monitoring. The final point of Professor Abdul Aziz Bagab, and I really appreciate his questions. He mentioned Al-Ghazali talking about the well-being of all mankind benefiting, from the Maqasid al-Sharia. And so I would probably point out that Muslims are a special creature, that basically our hearts are attuned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our individualism is probably not promoted that much compared to our desire, to help others, to help Allah's creatures. And if the heart of the Muslims is sound, then automatically the whole of humanity will benefit. So this is something related to our index, that we're trying to measure sound hearts of the Muslim population of a country, and that might differ from the elite. It might differ because we're talking about Indonesia, Malaysia, like the governments are relatively secular, but these countries, because of the bulk of their citizens are Islamic focused and directed, that they come out on top in the index. So Muslims like this, they can be helpful to humanity, to the environment, to the animals and plants as well. So that follows automatically if the Muslims have a high level of Islamic well-being. So just moving on to Professor Azizi comments, and I thank you for those, Professor. You were suggesting, and you mentioned that in some of the exercises that have been carried out, that people had been using many indicators, and the Islamicity Index of Hussein and al-Shari, they use a multitude of indicators. I would just say that what we need to do, I think, with the Islamic Well-Being Index is to focus on those critical indicators, that we don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. That some indicators are potentially less appropriate than others. And we don't want to sort of lose the weighting of the important indicators by putting in other indicators which are of less importance. And within the Maqasid al-Sharia itself, we have a rating of, from the Dariyat to the Hajiyat to Tahsinanat. We're focusing on the priority ones, because our index has to apply to all countries which have different backgrounds and natures. So we're focusing on the priority aspects, and those that will reflect the state of the hearts of the Muslims. This is our objective. So we will need to basically continue in that approach, I would say, but we are open to new indicators and which are relevant to our index. And if somebody can suggest some others that are valuable to us, we will consider and take them on board. On your other comment about the importance of the government and relating to the government, some measure of governments in the index, I probably would point out that this effort led by Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf was to develop a measure and index Islamic contemporary statehood of Muslim states or governance. So this is like setting up the environment at the government level, but we're trying to measure the outcome. Also, the OIC, I believe they have a Sharia index. These are like development indexes, like trying to develop Muslim countries into a good state. But what we are doing is different. We are measuring the outcome as reflected in the individual citizens of the country. So ours is the outcome, the result. And the other indices are how to bring about, Islamic development and well-being, So they're rather different types of indices, actually, or approaches, I would say. But having said that, it is essential that we engage with the governments of Muslim countries to try to assist them towards Islamic well-being of their citizens. The comments, thank you for Dr. Alwani for your comments. I take on board that some sectors are trying to use religion for their own agendas, so we don't sort of get involved in these aspects. We see the outcome of government actions and or the impacts from entities who are maybe not sincere in their promotion of religion. We are trying to find the authentic state of Muslims in a country, which will be, reflected from all that's going around in the environment, in the social environment, government policies, and so on and so forth. We will see the outcome and the result of that. You're also saying that, talking about the, dynamic situation and changing within societies that is taking place over time. And I would say that our index is picking up this quite well, because we are seeing major changes even over 12 months in the individual countries. Like Kosovo is dramatically rising. Others are falling. And these are reflecting what is happening in those countries. And we know what's happening in those countries. It's very serious if a company drops so rapidly. And they are facing serious issues in certain countries. So I think the Islamic Well-Being Index is a great research tool that you can see how different Muslim countries are responding to crises, such as the pandemic, how different countries are responding differently. And if our index is correct, it should be a reflection of resilience also, because we know in a Muslim's life there will be good times and bad times. In the good times, we're shukr, we give shukr. In the bad times, we're patient, we're sabr. And this is what we see with the leaders, because this is a pandemic index, that the leaders are showing resilience in the face of the pandemic. So, that's one aspect of the index. We can monitor how countries perform under stress. And yes, together with, the comment by Dr. Bagal, we need to look at the institutionalization of the index to be able to carry it forward to its, to try to ensure its ultimate potential of good and benefit for the Ummah, inshallah. So thank you for those, Dr. Awani. Dr. Ghazali, spoke about, the importance of, reaching out to different groups in society. He's a member of a multi-faith organization, a great supporter. As I mentioned before, and we can see this more in the West, that Christian religion is falling away, and Islam is standing strong, and we are the beacon of light for humanity going forward. So by having strong Muslims with Islamic well-being, we will be able to reflect the light of Islamic teachings to humanity for their benefit. So this is the connection with Islamic well-being. So thank you for all your support, Dato, in this regard on the index. So it's been very beneficial for me to have your feedback from the discussants. I appreciate that greatly because to some extent I've been developing this myself, and now is the opportunity to share with others and benefit. Yes, Tato.
I just have one point. I was very actively involved in the formation of the Malaysian Institute of Integrity and also the Malaysian Institute of Corporate Governance and a host of other institutes. But they function in silos. There's not enough of that getting together of the ideas and no synergy involved. And I think it's very important that somewhere down the line, we must get the acts together, because we are just wasting time. I attend all their ceremonies, blah, 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 all the papers, seminars. But really, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see that synergy developing. And a lot of effort has been put into this. And I just wanted to say this because your efforts, I think, is very good. And I think you can be what you call the unifying factor of all this. Very important. I thought I'd just mention that in passing.
I totally empathy with you on that, because in Western institutions, you see, like separation of disciplines, and arts people not necessarily talking to the scientists and or the religious alim. So the strength of Islam is that we, Allah is at the core of everything we do, and we have the great example of the scholars of the past, who are polymaths, crossing disciplines, and then we have the holistic understanding from the Islamic perspective. So, inshallah, this can be incorporated, and we can not just talk to ourselves, but we can engage with, society at large, governments on different levels, and the intention is to provide benefit to humanity at large, maslaha. So I think
Prof. Abdul Aziz want to say.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. I can hear you.
Okay. I have just one last suggestion. Alhamdulillah, I think this is a very good discussion, and we have seen many important aspects. What I want to propose, Brother Dr. Dawood, we can have, or we can assemble a multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary team of experts, scholars, including our Dato, mashallah, from his experience. He mentioned a lot of great things, and he said that he is in support of this. And I think we can have a team where we have industry, we have business players who are really for this and who want to see the model, integrated value-based model of Islamic well-being, and we can promote it to the world. Let's, the next move is engage more scholars, experts, industry players, business players, and form a team. And ISTAC here would like to welcome you if you wanted to have discussions or meetings on this. We will inshallah support you, but let's get people from business, from economics, from sociology, from psychology, from all disciplines and from business, who knows what is Islam, what is Quran, what is the model, what is this, and also they know the modern tools, so that we create something that we will be, inshallah, proud of in the future, inshallah. That's the last comment that I want to say. Thank you very much.
With that, I think we can end our program today with Tasbih Kafarah dan Suratul As. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.